I didn't know anything about, I looked at it like it was a deck, not a portal into another dimension and or another level of consciousness. So, when I clearly got in touch with like my higher self, my ancestors, it was a really cool, fun, insightful thing, and I just really threw myself into it. But I didn't know to, burn protective herbs. I didn't know to like smudge my space. I didn't know to be discerning about the messages that were coming through. I didn't know to um, be selective about who I was reading for or who I was letting read for me. Um, spiritual hygiene was not a part of the lesson when I was handed that first deck of cards, and that's not on anybody else. But that's why I feel like I need to be talking about this right now. Is because all of this spiritual stuff that is so powerful is so accessible, and I had to learn about spiritual hygiene by way of not incorporating it into my practice, and that is a hard way to learn. I'll say that. I think most people who are doing this right now have probably can probably relate to um, seeing their worst fears play out, at least in a reading. Um, I saw my worst fears like on a different level of consciousness play out in my 3D world, and it scared the shit out of me. Um, and it followed me after I left Portland. So all of this is to say, the reason why I'm so obsessed with spiritual hygiene, the reason why um, I do what I do, and I'm doing this right now, is because I think there's so much that is just inherently unknown about the other side and the spiritual stuff. Um, the one thing that has been made very clear to me is that the laws of the spiritual realm are not as forgiving as the way that we do things here on the 3D plane. Um, so the fact that, I was like opening a portal through my tarot cards every day out of like excitement to grow and do shadow work, and not knowing to be intentional about who I was trying to connect with on the other side, not being intentional about what I was really asking or looking for or whatever, just being drawn to it. It was coming from a good place, but the spiritual realm doesn't care if you're ignorant or if you're like actively going around like doing black magic, like I had been told that my ancestor or like, generations before me had been doing. Um, I have to take responsibility for my ignorance, or I need to be accountable for mistakes that I've made, even if they are mistakes. And that's why I read. That's why the readings that I do are focused on shadow work and identifying those things that are difficult to take accountability for, and transmuting them. That's why I do boundary work. That's why I continue to read tarot after being after scaring myself, really, is what it was. So yeah, and I did pull. Maybe we'll just do another one. I feel guided to, or I felt guided, and now I'm feeling guided again, to do like a collective sort of like, why is this being brought to the forefront? Because this is like being made very clear, like nothing else is about to get done. Like, I need to put this out there. I need to explain the tweet. I need to explain. Yeah, I need to bring balance to this debt, be it generational or out of my own ignorance towards something so powerful. And it is not to, to bring out like fear around this stuff. It can be a very healing means of it can be a very healing tool. I'm talking divination specifically, because that's really what I have experience with. It can be very healing, very productive, very very helpful, but if you think about it like it's a portal, I think that, which I don't think a lot of people are like introduced to it as, I think that we can prevent some of this like debt that is accrued by way of like ignorance, and hopefully help people to sleep better at night, if that's all it comes down to. Like, it's not a great experience to call in something that like you weren't specific about. It's not a good experience to connect with something that did not have your best interest in mind, when that is what you were going into it to find. So I'm gonna light some rosemary. Okay. Um, yeah, so Spirit wants to reiterate that um, hiding or denying or avoiding um, is not going to bring the peace that you may be looking for um, by way of, by way of avoiding. It will be beneficial to, if this is something that you want to work with, um, like divination tools or doing spell work or Reiki or any kind of like energy work, anything that requires sort of like being a channel or a medium for power that is so much higher than this dimension. Do your research is what's coming through. And like make sure that you're familiar with the rules of what you're getting involved with, because again, it's not as forgiving on that realm. And I just want to add that like I'm a medium, like, so like I work with spirits, but I like benevolent spirits only, because it's very much a thing to like come across a lost soul or someone who is like stuck, and as heartbreaking as that is, like they attach, and like you are I think some spirits like to have fun. Okay, they like to play tricks, they like to bargain, and I think that that's a slippery slope. And that's just talking spirits. I don't know a thing about like the deities, the I'm not even going to talk about anything dark. Like that is not I have zero answers, zero any of that. You know, but this is talking about educating yourself. Ignorance is not going to save you. That's what I just heard. So that's okay. Okay, and this did come through in the other reading. You have to say the thing. I wish I could remember what the cards were. This thing that I'm talking about right now has been on my mind literally every single day of my life. It keeps me up at night. It is the reason. I mean, it's I'm afraid of it. It's consuming. It's like anxiety provoking. So it's been on my mind. And it's almost like it was so scary that I just like didn't talk about it. Like, not like this. Like, I've certainly talked about like spiritual hygiene and why I'm like so into it, but like not like this. You know, bringing deliberate attention to the fact that like I'm paying a karmic debt because of the approach that generations before me took, that I'm not immune to, that I was conditioned to also approach that way. You know what I'm saying? And so like that was a very difficult, scary thing to admit. I'm looking at the 5 of Cups at the bottom of the deck right here, and I'm seeing that like just dark figure. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to know what that was. And it was almost like by holding space for this conversation, I was gonna have to like admit that like I fucked up. I made a mistake. Like, and with that comes a cost. And for me, that I'm like having to like have this really vulnerable, hard conversation. You know, revealing like my shadow why, I guess you could say, like why I do this like healing work, why I continue to read tarot. Like, I'm bringing balance to a situation that I am paying for, that I didn't necessarily initiate, that I didn't want to take accountability for, even though, you know, again, it was whatever. Literally be this like cyclical about it. Cards flying about. Anyway, so this is about accountability. This is about educating ourselves on the things that maybe it's dry, maybe it's boring to like read a book on whatever it is that you're interested in, or maybe it's daunting, maybe you don't have time, maybe it's scary, but like not educating yourself on the work that you want to do is going to stagnate the fulfillment of like your purpose. Okay, so this is coming through again. We're being challenged to face our fears, really, to put it simply. I'm looking at the 3 of Swords reversed, the 2 of Wands reversed, and the Temperance card. It's like as we ascend, we're not going to be able to like get away with like, okay, not okay, so whether you're on like a spiritual journey or not, and I've said this about like spiritual hygiene, like that's for everybody. Like, whether you're reading tarot or casting runes or whatever it is that you do, we are all spiritual beings. We're all on a healing journey. That applies to everybody. If you have a spirit, you need to be practicing spiritual hygiene. But so as we ascend, we are going to be challenged with this idea of facing our fears, even if like, this isn't like, okay, like, this stuff scares me, I'm not going to read tarot, I'm never going to get my cards read. This is like a collective thing. Like, this is a spiritual existence. So learn about it. Like, you can't just be like, I mean, granted, you can do whatever you want, but it's not going to serve you. It's not going to like make you feel any more at peace by being like, oh, ghosts aren't real. Like, things like that. That's kind of the idea. It's not going to serve you to be like, oh, well, my ancestors, that was what they did. Like, you are a part of that lineage. So that accountability that you take for your ancestors, for yourself, therein, because like, you are your family. Like, even if your family sucks, like, you were conditioned under their logic. Ooh, feeling like a weird, it makes me want to ground. It's a great stone for grounding. This is raw black tourmaline. We got it from our very own Charmed on Shem Creek. Oh yeah, so you are your family. The difference between, and granted, I'm sure it depends on like what the thing is, but this is what's coming through. The difference between what your ancestors did to like continue this cycle and you is that accountability. It's not this like, oh, well, I'm different. Like, even if you're like on a conscious level, you're like, I'm interested in like breaking the generational cycle. Like, that's not the difference. The difference is feeling that conditioning and like owning it and then transmuting it. Not just being like, oh, like, we're different, I'm different from them, like, I'm the black sheep. Like, that's not the point. At least if this is like means anything to, like, is resonating for you, because that's what I'm getting. Okay. Couple things. I'm hearing you either inflict the cycle on yourself for generations to come, or you take a leadership role. That's very intense, but it's like one or the other. And there's something here about relinquishing this might not be for everyone, but like not being, you're not arrogant for seeing what needs to be changed and doing it. Again, you making the change does not necessarily mean you're like, oh, I'm smarter, I have like this better way of doing things. Like, the difference is the accountability. So who's to say that like 5 generations before you weren't like, I see that this needs to change, and just like couldn't do the difficult thing of like owning that they were conditioned to literally do the same thing, and like having to fight that like almost human nature of just like going with it. Like, it's hard work. So don't worry about like coming off as arrogant. Like, your benevolent ancestors who are like supporting you and like want to see the lineage like get stronger, improve. They're celebrating this, and they recognize the work that you're doing. And you are protected. And you are guided. The difference is the accountability. That was the Knight of Wands. So embodying that energy through this leadership, like, get excited about how monumental this change is. Like, when you take accountability for something that in your own life that you weren't taking accountability in before, you are allowing space for a totally different, you're allowing yourself the opportunity to like elevate and get closer to like your absolute highest dimensional self, like your highest form of being, to be closer and more aligned with, I mean, your like soul. Like, you're breaking free of like conditioning inflicted by like this dimension that is just like so temporary. Like, if it feels like a big deal, it like seriously is, and it is hard, and it is monumental, and that's worth celebrating. I mean, like, your ancestors are celebrating it. It's a big deal. Your benevolent ancestors, always benevolent. We're not here for that. So yeah, I'm probably going to be talking a lot more about ways that you can like set the intention of like who you want to talk to, how to read safely, how to be more specific about what you're manifesting. Talking about stuff you can burn to make your safe space while you practice and delve into this inevitable kind of unknown, honestly, is what the other side, I would say, is. It's inevitable, and it can be a good thing, but not by way of avoidance. So this wasn't too repetitive, or too long. It's kind of long. I feel like there's more. Okay. I'm supposed to talk about me a little bit more. Probably because I don't want to, but yeah, that phrase of like calling in this and that, be specific, be mindful that that is you're giving whatever you're calling in a key to your crown chakra. And in my experience, it's not what I knew I was doing, but in my experience, someone with a key to your crown chakra can send you downloads the same way that, like, you know, an ordained, high vibrational, benevolent spirit guide, or like that, like, the way that like your spirit guides will send you like angel numbers, stuff like that. Like, that is what you are. You don't want to just give someone that kind of access to you, to your mind, to your I didn't know. And I was very lax. I was like throwing that around, like calling in so and so, calling in like, and it was like well intended. I didn't know necessarily that like these ancestors I was calling in, like, that they were not, they did not have the same, they were not aligned with my values. Like, so now I had, you know, I mean, there was a point where I was like, I can't even trust my intuition because I'm being guided away from my alignment. Does that make sense? Because I gave that power away. So, be it excessive or not, I mean, I have very extensive cleansing rituals and means of having to discern what is really for me and what is not. And I have had to, revoke access. And that doesn't seem to be like a, whoever has that key, like, isn't trying to just, like, be like, okay, yeah, revoked, okay, like, it's hard, it's heavy, it's terrifying, and that is why I am sharing this story. But the thing about it is, one, I'm really grateful to have been keen on, like, what is in alignment with me and what's not, because it kind of pointed that to me that there was an issue, and in being aware that it was an issue but not knowing what the root was, I have been able to develop these, like, cleansing rituals and means of being intentional and discerning when it comes to my readings, my practice, and just my general spiritual hygiene. And so my way of sort of bringing balance to that debt, is sharing some of that. Not some of it. Like, I don't want anyone with, like, a heart of wanting to, like, change and be good and, get closer to their higher selves, to go into these things, these spiritual practices, unaware, and, like, so that's the point. That's what I'm doing. That's my karma. A little precarious. That's my karma, is, like, this is not comfortable for me to talk about. It's, like, literally top 3 worst fears, like, is, like, the scary stuff on the other side. Like, I don't want to touch it, I don't want to talk about it, like, whatever. But again, that's the direction we're going in. If that's what it is, I have this insight from a mistake I made, so I'm gonna share everything I know, do everything that I can do to make sure that people who are wanting to elevate and, like, be aligned with light are doing that effectively and safely. And because It's crazy out there. Okay. I think it's too smoky in here. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched all of that, like, power to you. I really appreciate you holding space for me to tell my story and kind of explain, like, what I do, the work I do, why I do it, why it's important to me, what I'm really trying to accomplish by way of, this time and energy. I truly wish the smoothest ascension for everyone involved. All right, so let's cut the fat, shimmy into alignment. Fight for the light, choose the light, and you know what? Be a little more mindful about how to really do that properly. All right.